In 3 minutes we start the live. This time it worked here, this time it worked here. Sometimes crashes. In 3 minutes we'll start. When it crashes here, some of you know my Instagram. You know it from the beginning. I'm also talking about Instagram, okay? Even so, when things get stuck here, I also record them on a cell phone and then send a video to you. I think things are reasonably good now. In 2 minutes we start today's live. We are in Sao Paulo. And now we're starting. 2 minutes. About something about my existential self, something very interesting to talk about, to understand, and how to defend yourself, right? How to defend yourself. In a minute we'll start our live broadcast today. Sometimes people ask, why do you start 3 minutes earlier? Sometimes everything is wrong, and then we have to change one thing, change another. At least that guarantees a little that we're starting at 8 o'clock, okay? That's why we start a little earlier. Okay, it's 8 p.m. I'm in Sao Paulo, and today is June 4th, 2025. Our live today has to do with the following. Me and existential do not exist. It reminds me a lot of Father Quevedo. You might even think, but what is this existential self? What is this thing? Look, the existential self is something that has been around for a long time. The existential self is something that comes from Europe. And survives everything. So this existential self is a lie. It doesn't exist, but through it or because of it, a lot of philosophy, psychology, study, education, all based on a self that doesn't exist, were created. So that's why today's live is about saying the existential self doesn't exist. It's a lie. It's fake news. There is no existential self. You know that regardless of what happens before you were born, it was you and it continues. And after you die, there is still a self in some way. This self doesn't exist. It simply doesn't exist. So what are we going to do? Okay, Jackson, you're going to put that in place, right? And that's what we're going to do today. Today, we're going to try to show how selves are manufactured within you and how the system wants to impose a self regulated by the system's own rules and norms. This is a little more sophisticated, but we get close to that. So you can sketch out this idea of how the system also wants to create a manipulated self inside you. And we will understand this, and it will even be easy to understand this. It won't be difficult, okay? No, the existential self doesn't exist. You are not a self. You are not one me, you have a lot of me. Transformed by some tensions that you have in your life, but always imagine yourself since PP, okay? So you don't get confused, because suddenly the tension that you have now in the me that you are now, you believe that you will always continue to be the same as you are now. But if you and I exchange some ideas, we will see that the you of 10 years ago has nothing to do with who you are now. Because the self does not continue, because this self does not exist. Everything is a metabolism that you identify yourself to be at each moment, and at each moment the metabolism is different, and that is what we need to have. One of the basic things that is important, it's like this: understand well, look, human sense, belonging, all the information common to this number of people, or this DNA, or these of living beings, the information that is common to everyone, gives everyone a sense of belonging, the information. Why am I saying this? Because it is the basis of a slightly larger self, a collective self, us, a self that is us, a self that is made up of 10 people, 20 people, 1 million people, 200 million people in Brazil, me, Brazilian. Because it is information that is common to everyone. If this information or misinformation is inconsistent, this state self, this Brazil self, breaks, cracks. And that is our live broadcast today. The existential self does not exist. What exists are selves that are manufactured, that are made, that are formed in you, that are forged in you and in me at every moment. How is that, right? How do these tensional selves work? What is it? What is the idea behind it? It's like this. You have a space inside you that I call 12 dimensions, okay? I have the vision of the senses that I have. I call it belonging, which occurs as a human sense, which is precisely perceiving things in common when you sell your cells, when you sell yourself, including bacteria. And how are these selves formed? Within these tensions and ideas that you were a baby. When you were a baby, you were hungry, but you missed your mother, which is not the longing, the desire to see that image again. You have tensions, and this tension creates a connection in your brain to supply your tensions, your vectors within you. Obviously, there is more than one tension. There are more than two tensions, but we have to reduce things to make it easier. This is something I learned very well. You have the whole, you cut the whole into little pieces to understand. But this excerpt, you lose the whole. Every time I give you an explanation, it is for you to understand. From the moment you understand, you forget the way I spoke, because the way I spoke is for you to get there. It is not the right way to get there, but the important thing is that you get there. So what I want to tell you is the following. Your self is formed in each moment. They are tensional selves. For example, I can have an internet self that is very informed, fear and hate, or fear and disgust. I can be afraid and disgusted of something on the internet. These are two tensions. And these two tensions form an I can have this, and the internet can provide this, or in real life itself. So there are always two tensions: hunger and fear, hunger and happiness. You have hunger and happiness, and you suddenly feel like having a party. So there are two tensions. To summarize, there are two tensions, or two vectors, to walk this web. And I talked a lot about a type of spider web. You connect the dots, yourself connects the dots. So at each moment, this self that learned to ride a bike connects all the dots every time it goes to ride a bike. Yourself that learned to do I don't know what, every time it goes to do I don't know what, it will connect more dots. I have some avatars. I have 6 avatars. Structural mathematics, EPI, is the number one in an indigenous community in the Amazon, but it also comes from the name of Ebbian theory. Ebbian theory says the following: neurons that fire together in your brain tend to fire together. Remember when I told you that your self is a spider web? It formed a spider web. So, the spider web for riding a bike. Look, balance, I don't know what, all set up you're riding a bike. But while you're riding a bike, something happened. Look, something happened here, something happened there, something happened here. At that moment, your attention and your perception happen. For you to perceive, the brain was stimulated, the neuron fired. Okay, if the neuron fired and the brain is, let's say the connection is here, the neuron fired in your brain, the web will try to connect this information, this web that is the self will connect this new information. On a practical level, what would this mean? For example, if the baby is suddenly very grumpy, at the time he is very grumpy, we should not leave those nice little toys next to him too much because he will develop a grudge against the toy. That's what we're doing. At that moment when he was being grumpy, it's a spider's web, it's a web of me. There are so many moments, right? Crying, hunger, but at some point the mother says, hey, I'm not going to leave these toys here nearby because I want him to relate to this toy, to have a relationship with the happy me, with the longing me, with the bedtime me, with the mealtime me, with the me. Each moment is a ritual for the being. Each moment is a me that will normally have a better formation. So our avatars, which I call mathematically, statistically, with artificial intelligence and everything, with all the possible software, what is happening in your brain? How are you connecting these dots? The existential self does not exist and has to do with NARS. You have to look at your oximetry too. You have to look at the resonance to see how your brain is doing, to identify what it does that gives this electrical potential that I will see in the EEG, what it does that causes this vasodilation or contraction in the brain areas where the oximetry goes up or down, where the hemoglobin or deoxyhemoglobin is altered by the consumption of neurons in that region. So I will measure it myself. I'm going to measure metabolism. Existential metabolisms are where you perceive yourself to be. So this means that the real self, the self in neuroscience, is one that can be measured. This existential self as a theory, an idea without being measured, is a fiction to control people. It is a fiction to control people, that which Republican systems adopt. So it's important for us to know that sometimes the political system adopts a structure, a self that comes from beyond, that comes from the philosophical confines of evolution. This self does not exist. We have to measure the self and we understand it now. And the population and in the environment that this person is in, that this living being is in, a different self appears. Look how interesting. Look how interesting. It is the government's commitment, it is the state's duty to create noble environments, pleasant environments, public squares, libraries, environments where the population can go, because the environment controls the self that appears in the environment. Yes, it controls, because the self which I speak to you, the sensation, the mind that you have, Interoception and proprioception and extended proprioception have to do with the environment you are in, a library, a square, a forest, a reserve, a waterfall. All this possession, this information creates new selves. And then there is belonging. What is belonging? Look, a stimulus that is the same for everyone. The smell of the waterfall, everyone feeling the same. There is something that is cool, that is nice. When you put the same stimulus for everyone, and this stimulus is misinformation, you are hacking, you are stealing the belongings of a group of people because you are sending disinformation to the group so that the group has a belonging controlled by you. You, I speak of a great power, the media, I don't know, you Twitter, you Facebook, or you, whoever controls the financial power that controls, let's leave now, let's attack the institutions because the institutions are not letting me buy, I don't know, the mineral, the rare minerals in this state, so I attack the institutions and privatize things. So it has to do with this misinformation, and that is very important for us to understand this part of belonging a little better. Let's suppose that you are going to talk to several people, but they are all thinking a little differently about things. For example, I'm going to have a relationship with a person, and I and that person, even though it's a lie, believe that after death the spirit will go to Mars and there will be a new stage of evolution on Mars. We will be better creatures on Mars. This lie, even though it's a lie, creates a sense of belonging between me and that person because we both accept this information as true, and this belonging gives rise to a formation of ideas. And furthermore, in this cerebral formation, with this belonging that after death I will go to Mars to evolve, I perhaps start to create tensions that whoever doesn't believe this is evil. This tension is creating a as I who hate differences of ideas, I am as I am raised, and I get belonging people who think in common with me, and then we go against those who are not in common with me to make belonging give a the same stimulus, the same misinformation. We believe in the same things, that they are evil, right? They are evil. But this misinformation can be put into your head by big tech. Big tech through financial power, through religiosity, control of religiosity. For example, in the entire American continent, if Europe had not invaded the entire American continent, there would be no Christianity in the entire American continent. Why? Christianity is a tool for massification when you want to colonize people. When you want to colonize, you came from Europe. Or something else, their religion. If it were Japan, each person with their own religion would use a paradigm to control people, placing spirituality within something more canned, something controlled, that I control the pastor, that I control the minister, that I control the priest, that I control something to control the masses. And then I also made an avatar, which is an interesting avatar. I call it, what are avatars? Avatars are little dolls that I created precisely when I think about neuroscience. I try to think of a little doll, and from that little doll I think of it as neuroscience. So one of the little dolls I told you about today was Mate. Statistics, analysis, science with evidence, and the EP has to do with this part of neurons that fire together, tend to fire together, or is number one in an American community, and the other was Dana. Dana has to do with DNA. Dana is a secular spirituality, state-owned. It is not to have followers, it is state-owned. If you want to be Dana, if you are secular, you are already Dana, and Dana has to do with your DNA. according to what he thinks. Republican states believe that if I have norms and rules, I can impose them on the population and create different selves in the population through the tension of the norms and rules that I impose. The true state The process goes to the population in the territory and sees the needs, creating norms and rules for the territories, from each small region of the territory to the entire territory. And the state is what is best for these DNAs that are in each region of these territories. This is important for us to have. Determined, knowing that in the morning you are one me, at noon you are another me. When you have this information, it is different. When you have this faith, it is different. When you have this expertise, it is different. If you go to college, you become more flexible. If you do a master's or a doctorate, you begin to understand and delve deeper into something. Of course, with every deepening you lose the whole, yes, but you gain tools which you can later expand to the whole. And misinformation enters a process for us to manipulate belonging, to control masses. Today I heard a little about fake news. I was passing through a legal section and I heard one of the judges was defending an idea, and he defended an idea that I mentioned, something really absurd. He defended big tech. He defended the idea that misinformation exists on the internet of the institutions. Lie. Misinformation exists on the internet everywhere to corrode the institutions and to put a differentiated power. Let's go. I told you in some previous lives that in 1954, if I'm not mistaken, that was the date, Getulio Vargas and Oswaldo Arana was out and said, man, the financial power took over the republic and also took over the armed forces and joined them. Money, Republic, Armed Forces, you have a coup ready. Money, Republic, Armed Forces. In Brazil, money means money. 0.1% of the people of Brazilians have a lot of money. These people with a lot of money in the financial market, 0.1%, control the law, appointing judges, prosecutors. Look, judges, prosecutors, you will see that it is from the middle class and above. No one from the lower class enters, so this power, this 0.1% of power, has already inserted into the state itself a status quo of people who are already in the class who will defend this power forever. And that is the problem we have. One person enters, another, but normally they will defend the status quo, they will defend exactly what is there, they will defend the system. It's a coup of its own. Did it start now? No, it's been like this for a long time. It's been like this outside of Brazil, in the United States, because in many places authoritarianism also has to do with this republic imposing the law on the population. It's not what the person needs, it's not what the population needs, it's what we're going to impose. And at this moment, financial capital wants to wear it down. Mining, oil, ore, lithium, iron, all mining, privatize and show that this will be profitable. Hold on. The financial market already has almost $1 trillion per year in revenue. And if we look at the financial market representative in our Congress, you can see that it is more or less close to 10%, and they now have these secret budgets. So we can't be naive about this. Those in power want to establish a republic and impose rules and regulations that will feed the 0.1% of the richest people in Brazil. That's what we have. Are we going to fight against that? We won't understand that. What can we do? I'm not going to get up, start a rebellion. That's what we have. But when someone controls our ideas, calm down. It's not like that. You want to tear down the state. You want to say that the state spends too much. Then you look at the state. Oh, there's a deviation here. There's a deviation. Correct it. The amount of corruption and embezzlement in private companies is huge. It's a huge issue. But if there is corruption in the state, hatred, corruption, and I create a UN on social media to corrode states, corrode institutions with the ultimate goal of changing this government, doing something else. It goes to one government and goes to the other, goes to the left, goes to the right, goes to the middle. It doesn't matter which government. What matters is the following. If the population is not being benefited, within you, and this is the issue we are going to address, within you, you have the three powers as well. You have the executive, you have the legislative, and you have the judiciary. But if somehow the judiciary, the legislative, is eroded, or the executive does not have the resources to execute works and things because the legislative already gets the resources for itself, then there is an inversion of powers. Just simplifying for you, the legislative, legal for you, in your head, inside you. You are judging what you did. Was it right or was it wrong? And the executive is what you are doing now. Each self that you have, each tension of self, it will make executive. It will execute something. But for example, when you are in the executive, this self can plan, read this book, go to this site, to this farm, or to this place. The self, it makes plans. The self judges what it did too. So the self almost other powers, legislative and executive, in the form of living beings, in our form of living beings, in the form of a republican government. No, then you lock it in and establish laws and rules, and then you make in some way the financial power control its deputies and senators so that the laws and rules favor financial speculation, favor privatization, and favor the state becoming increasingly weak. Because if the state becomes weak, someone will gain a lot. And if someone will gain a lot, it will always be 0.1% of the population. The state can become very strong, very powerful, but we have to give power to the population, to the individual. Not the population as a group, but the individual, the natural person. Everyone should be receiving income from the state, and the state is increasingly stronger. And the laws and rules go from the place where the individual is to the state, and not the state imposing the rules and norms for all territories and in all regions. Okay, but let's go back to big tech. Big tech, they are billionaires. They are such big billionaires. If Musk wants Bolivia's lithium, what will he do? He will leave the far right in Bolivia and privatize Bolivia's lithium. And how will he do that? Social media. So today, when you start looking at social media and the lies, a new self is being created based on the information that comes in. Let me explain this differently. I'm going to tell you a lie. It's my right. I'm going to tell you a lie. Look, so-and-so, you know what I mean? Okay, you say, since you told this lie, you go and talk to your friend and say, look, is it true that so-and-so did this and that? Is it true that there's this corruption here? No, I don't know. Since this must be crazy if this same lie is being spread in my region to 10 million people. Everyone wants me to tell them the information is the same, even if it's a lie. Feeling is the truth, and we now have a coherence. We have a sense of belonging on top of the same lie. We are a liar, we are a liar. But what happens close to the election changes the votes, changes things, changes the position. The shares go up, the shares go down, and there is a social manipulation on top of the misinformation. So misinformation has a power that we must somehow the system has to control big tech. I can't let misinformation run wild, and I can't get there either. Let's look at disinformation. There is disinformation that I believe you speak and it may be a lie, that's fine. But there is disinformation that is creating new selves. Through what? Quorum sense, mass information for a lot of people. By having mass information for a lot of people, these people start to have a similar structure, a sense of belonging. On the internet, it's easy to make everyone accept this. I create groups here. Move these groups somewhere. With robots and artificial intelligence, move this group to where the power, the 0.1% of the richest want it to go. I don't want so-and-so to be elected. I don't want this to happen. Look, everyone has to hate so-and-so. Let's change the situation. Everyone will say that no one will believe in the institutions. If no one believes in the institutions, they will become weak. If they become weak, a strong private company will go and control them. It's that simple. We have to rebuild our institutions and politicians. That we need to have true politicians to take and reinforce this individual self of people, to give value to each person's self at that moment, and that will change the gesture, the manner, the relationship of that individual, and knowing that the truth people, it's not in any of the people, it's not with me, it's not with you, it's not with the other guy, but we're sincere, so let's talk, and even if we have different ideas, we reach certain middle grounds to do things, and this is a little closer to the truth really no one reaches, and whoever thinks they have reached the truth is already possessed by something very satanic, because they think they have the truth. No one has it. In fact, it's a middle ground, it's a conversation, it's a discussion, it's getting closer to something. So you have to be very careful with this so that you always have a better, more focused structure, a structure directed towards this balance, towards diplomacy between people. And always know that normally the Republic wants to attack and impose rules on you. It wants to impose errors within you. Differentiated selves, it wants to place an existential self, which has to follow rules in this and that way. It wants to forge you. It wants to put you inside a can of a self that it controls. Big tech is already doing this with you, with me, so we have to have regulations in big tech in such a way. Will or impose tensions that create new selves within you. These tensions that create a self. Fake, but what does it do? How can that be? A fake me will do it, and that's so out of place, right? We'll have to think about other things, we'll adopt other dogmas, we'll think a little more, read the It's important that you go to college, understand things a little better from a different perspective without bias. There are a lot of things on the internet that you can think about. That's right, you'll get a positive response. Why will you get a positive response? So that your attention is hijacked by that algorithm. And here, with the attention hijacked by that algorithm, it does this, you throw misinformation at it and you turn on your misinformation. You become uninformed and think you're wise. Time passes, life ends, and you've been fooled for a good part of your life. Be careful, pay attention, good books, modern books, go to the good sources, look at your sources. Everyone, big hug, see you next Wednesday.